Hello friends. This is Marvel Fiction. How are you all? So in this video, we will see, what if every Avenger character's powers got switched, Thor as Iron Man and Black Widow as Hulk, Hawkeye as Thor. But before we start, if you want more amazing stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Also, if possible, share this video with your friends. Now without wasting any more time, let's begin the story. The Avengers. A team of remarkable people with abilities that nobody duplicate. For starters, there was the captain. Captain Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, the man of the Star and Stripes. Thanks to the Super Solider Serum, this made Steve from a frail boy to peak human perfection. Second, was the self-described, and I quote, genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist. Tony Stark was just a weapon manufacturer until he was captured by some terrorists in Afghanistan. After building a suit of armor to escape, he returned home and made a few modifications to the suit. Now, he was known as the hero, Iron Man. Third, was a man of deep anger issues. One small issue and out comes his alter ego, the Hulk. Bruce Banner was just a normal scientist until being exposed to high levels of gamma radiation. This causes Bruce to turn into an enormous green rage monster when enraged or injured. Fourth, was the demigod beyond the stars, Thor. Prince of Thunder. Having the ability to control the lightning with his magical hammer, Mjolnir, this makes him invulnerable to almost anything. A very skilled warrior. Fifth, was the master marksman, Clint Barton, or better known as Hawkeye. He never misses the target and always does a clean shot with whatever arrow he uses. Whether his arrows are standard, explode, or release a net, they always get the job done. Lastly, was the master assassin, Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow. She had to earn the title, but she deserved it. Master at mixed martial arts and just something simple like shooting a gun. Natasha even has a signature weapon of her own, ones that she calls Widow's Bites. All 6 of them have exceptional abilities. But the question is, can they still fight as well with each other's abilities? Find out. It was a normal night at Stark Towers. Well, define normal when you're living with a 90-year-old super solider, a demigod, a man who could pop any second, a drunken genius and 2 master assassins. Anyway, it was like any other night here. The Avengers would pig out over some kind of takeout food Tony would make Jarvis order. Tonight, it just happened to be Chinese. After passing out the food, the Avengers ate away at their heart's content. Didn't we have Chinese yesterday? Clint complained. Yes. Tony confirmed. But, the fortune cookie yesterday said that I would have good luck if I ordered again. Natasha snickered. Stark, you're so stupid. That's their promotional stunt to make you buy more food. Well, it worked. Tony smiled proudly as he took a bite into more noodles. All I wanted is the fortune cookies. Bruce mentioned. Those cookies taste like crap, but the fortunes are great. You actually believe what a piece of paper tells you? Thor asked. No, but they are hilarious. Bruce mentioned. Steve, pass me the fortune cookies. Steve picked up the bag which once had the takeout containers. He looked in the bag and frowned. There's only 1 cookie. What a rip-off. Tony grunted. Just read it, Steve. Steve ripped open the plastic and crushed the cookie. He threw the crumbs in the trash and straightened the small sheet of paper. Your abilities are already mastered. Try someone else's for a while. What the hell? Natasha asked. How are we supposed to live up to that? On the bright side, our lucky day is March 17th. Steve smiled. That's next week. So, Clint wondered, it's not going to help us. Anyway, Thor said, I shall go to my floor now, it is pretty late. Bruce looked at his watch and noticed it was past 11 p.m. Yeah, see you all tomorrow. Tony got up and asked sarcastically, why don't we try each other's powers tomorrow? Over my dead body. Natasha commented. Don't take this the wrong way, Bruce, but who would want to be the Hulk? None taken. Bruce said. This type of power could fall into the wrong hands and who knows what would happen. It was a beautiful morning at Stark Towers. Well, at least so far. There weren't any explosions, broken objects and constant bickering, at least, so far. Thor was the first to rise. He stretched for a bit before getting up. Good morning, Thor. Jarvis greeted. Sleep well? Yes, I have. Voice I hear but can never see. Thor replied. For the weeks of living at Stark Towers, the demigods still didn't get the concept of Jarvis, along with every other piece of tech at the tower. "Would you like some breakfast? Maybe later," Thor said as he walked over to his hammer, refusing to bend over and pick it up. He stuck out his hand wanting the hammer to fly to it. But it didn't even budge. He made a few fists, cracked his knuckles and even tried his other hand. Nothing. After many attempts of that, he finally decided to bend over and get a grip. Thor pulled as hard as he can before falling over. He couldn't believe it, he couldn't lift Mjolnir, the hammer that he was the only one worthy to lift. He was told many times to respect the others while they're sleeping, but this was indeed an emergency. By Odin's beard, what kind of madness is this? At the reaction to that, some of the Avengers got up and ran to the demigod's floor. All exhausted but with somewhat shocked expressions to his scream. For the billionth time, Thor, the toast is supposed to pop out of the toaster when it's done, Bruce reminded him. "It is not that," Thor said. "I cannot pick up my hammer." "Here, let me try," Clint said as he headed over to the hammer. "I shall warn you, Mjolnir is." Thor stopped talking when he saw Clint lift the hammer. All the men shared the same perplexed look. He didn't even make it look hard, he just lifted it as if it weighed nothing. "How the hell did you do that?" Steve asked. "I thought that Thor was the only one worthy to hold the hammer." "Okay. This makes no sense," Tony commented. "But everyone else, get your equipment and head to the training room." "Shouldn't we wake Natasha?" Bruce asked. "I mean, she could help us." "Remember the last time we woke Natasha before noon?" Clint asked the group. "She said that she would drug us in our sleep and lock us up in the sewers of a foreign country. Then just get her guns and widow bites." 10 minutes later. On the training room's floor consisted of weapons, specifically, Clint's bow and arrows, Tony's Mark 7 suit, Steve's shield, Thor's hammer and Natasha's widow's bites and guns. "Okay. We're positive that Clint can lift Thor's hammer," Steve mentioned. "What else?" Clint picked up his bow and passed it to Bruce. "See if you can shoot," but before he raised the bow, Clint wrapped a handkerchief around his eyes, blindfolded. Bruce nodded his head and raised the bow. He shot the arrow and ripped of the hanky to see where the arrow landed. It turns out that it hit the wall, about 7 feet away from the actual target. Tony wrapped the hanky around his eyes and grabbed the bow, when the arrow flew. Everyone was shocked when it actually hit the target. "Oh my God," Tony muttered. "Seems like you have the ability of the hawk," Thor grasped. "But I wonder whose I have." Before anyone could say anything, Bruce noticed something odd. "Thor, what are those bracelets on both of your wrists?" Thor examined his wrists with confusion. "I do not know. I did not notice them when I awoke." "Wait," Tony said. "Those are the bracelets that assemble the Mark 7 suit. Give it a try, Thor." "I shall," Thor said. When the suit and the bracelets simultaneously glowed red, the suit began assembling onto Thor. Shockingly, the suit fit the demigod's build. "This is very interesting. But how does one operate it?" "Just tell it what to do," Tony told him. "I'm just wondering why the man who can't operate a toaster gets my suit." "Is that really what you're wondering about, Stark?" Steve asked. "Just look at the whole situation. Anyway, whose power did you get?" Bruce questioned the Solider. "I don't know. I know how to find out," Clint said as he walked up to the Solider. He punched in the jaw and kicked him in the gut. Steve fell over. "What the hell was that for?" he exclaimed. "To see if you had the Hulk." Clint smiled. "But since you don't, you have Natasha's and Bruce has yours." The guys headed beside each other to try to figure this out. Now, Thor was out of the suit to join the discussion. "Okay," Tony said. "Just to be clear, I have Clint's, Thor has mine, Clint has Thor's, Steve has Natasha's, Bruce has Steve's. That just leaves the Hulk," Bruce stammered among his words. And before Bruce could finish, the redhead they all loved but sometimes feared walked into the training room, half asleep and still in her pajamas. "Guys," she moaned, "can someone please explain the racket you're all making?" The 5 men all looked at each other with a look of fear, thinking the same thing. How the hell would they tell her this and how will she react? Before Bruce could finish, the redhead they all loved but sometimes feared walked into the training room, half asleep and still in her pajamas. "Guys," she moaned, "can someone please explain the racket you're all making?" The guys all stared at each other with confusion. Guys, Natasha exclaimed. Don't make me mad. No, the guys yelled, which kind of started Natasha. Okay then, what is really going on? What makes you think something's up? Bruce asked while fidgeting with his fingers. We're just 5 guys training for future battles. Well, I know for a fact that you're all up before 11 a.m. and Clint is holding Thor's hammer. Clint put Thor's hammer on the ground and walked up to Natasha. Okay Tasha, there is a reasonable explanation for all this. There better be, 'cause all I know for a fact is that Thor is the only one who is worthy. Lift it. Tony walked in front of her and said, It's all a dream, Natasha. Natasha glared at him and slapped him in the face. Tell me, Barton, she yelled. From the angry look on her face, Clint saw a slight shade of green. Look, Natasha, Steve said, calming Natasha down. Remember the fortune cookie from our Chinese food yesterday? Your abilities are mastered. Try someone else's for a while. Natasha remembered. Anyway, in the middle of the night, our powers got switched. Then who has whose? Bruce stepped in to clarify. I have Steve's, Steve has yours, Tony has Clint's, Clint has Thor's, Thor has Tony's, and you have. Stop, Natasha interrupted. After all that, it means that I have Bruce's. Her pale complexion turned more pale than usual. Are you feeling all right, Lady Natasha? Thor asked, concerned. Yeah, it's not every day you get told you're the Hulk. In other words, what do we do? Clint asked. How can we get our powers back? I'll look into that, Tony said. In the meantime, Bruce, teach Natasha how to keep her cool. What? Natasha asked. I can keep my cool. Really? You almost popped when you thought we were lying about training. Touché. A while later, the Avengers sat at the breakfast table eating breakfast. Tony was scrambling through holograms finding an answer to their dilemma. They were desperate for answers to how this happened and how to reverse it. That is, until Jarvis told him something. Mr. Stark, Jarvis called. Miss Potts is on her way up. Should I warn her about? No, Tony interrupted. Don't. What do you mean no? Clint asked. If Pepper's going to be here, it's better if she knows. I know that, Clint. It's just, I'm going to think of a way to ease it in. Before Clint could say anything, the elevator opened and Pepper walked out. She looked elegant in her black knee-high dress with her matching heels. Morning, Pepper greeted. Avengers, is there anything you would like me to do first? Actually, Pepper, there is. Tony said. Do you own yoga pants and a sports bra? Pepper along with the remaining Avengers gave Tony the same confused look. Tony, I don't think you can ask a woman that. Steve commented. Steve, it's not the 1940s. Tony mentioned. Anyways, do you, Pepper? Yes, Pepper said, unsure of what's next. Might I ask why? Well, I want you to take Natasha out for yoga. What the hell, Stark? Natasha commanded. I think it's a good idea. Bruce brought up. It's a good way to relax and practice on controlling your anger. Natasha shot them a death glare. Fine, just give me about 20 minutes. At Good Life Fitness Center, Pepper and Natasha walked in the room sporting the yoga pants and sport bras along with every other lady in the room. They both rolled out their mats and stood on them while waiting for the fitness instructor to prepare. Have you ever done yoga before? Natasha asked Pepper. Before I worked for Tony. Pepper replied. But now, I realize that I need the relaxation now cause of him. Natasha snickered. I know exactly what you mean. Before them, the instructor looked at them and the rest of the class. Good morning, ladies. Today, we'll just start with the basics. As you breath in, raise your arms in the air. And as you exhale, lower your arms. Begin. Natasha inhaled as she rose her arms in the air and lowered them as she exhaled. After doing that a few times, she realized that this was relaxing. As if it was taking off the excess weight off her shoulders. Very good, ladies. Now we're going to try the tree pose. Just raise your arms in a circle above your head. Then, lift one foot off the ground and place it on the side of your leg. Natasha and Pepper did so and smiled at each other. Until something caught their attention. The main window facing them broke and a small device rolled in front of them. Natasha looked at it with her heart rate slowly escalating, trying to break down what it was. Grenade, she exclaimed as it exploded. Her along with Pepper slammed against a wall. Pepper got up and noticed Natasha breathing harder than usual. Natasha, Pepper asked, "Are you all right?" Natasha looked up and Pepper noticed that she was covered in sweat and her eyes turned from smoky to jade green in mere seconds. Run. Stark Towers. The male Avengers were sitting on the couch catching up on the latest episodes of The Big Bang Theory, till Jarvis paused it. "What the hell?" Clint asked. "What was that for?" "Incoming call from." Jarvis told them. "Put her on speaker," Tony said. After Jarvis did so, "Hey Pepper, how's your day with Natasha?" "Tony," she exclaimed, "you need to come quick. Something happened and it's an emergency." "Whoa, what exactly happened, Pep?" "I don't know how, but Natasha seems to be hulking out." Before Tony could reply, the line went dead. "I don't know how, but Natasha seems to be hulking out." Before Tony could reply, the line went dead. "Jesus Christ, Stark," Bruce exclaimed. "You just had to not tell Pepper." "I'm sorry," Tony yelled back, "but that's not our biggest problem at the moment." "Anyway, what are we supposed to wear?" Clint asked. "If you haven't forgotten, our powers got switched." "Don't worry," Jarvis told them. "I have checked your hero outfits and they have also changed to your measurements." "Great," Steve said. "We'll investigate in that later," but Jarvis traced down the call. "It seems to be from Good Life Fitness Center along 6th Avenue. Thor, meet us there." "I shall," Thor bellowed. "But might I ask, friend Tony, how does one operate the suit?" Tony hesitated. "Jarvis, take care of that." "Yes sir," Jarvis said. The remaining Avengers ran to their rooms and saw that Jarvis has already laid out their outfit along with their weapons. Steve attempted to put on the skin-tight suit and noticed that it was way tighter than his stars and stripes. Speaking of that suit, after Bruce put it on, he looked at himself in the mirror and wondered how the hell Steve would wear this in public. Clint and Tony thought they looked smashing in the suits they were in, but missed their own suits. "Mr. Odinson has left the tower prior to 7 minutes ago." "Then what are we waiting for?" Clint asked rhetorically. "Let's go." Good Life Fitness Center. Pepper tried to make Natasha calm down, but it was no use. She already turned into an enormous green rage monster which left Pepper in the feelings of fear and confusion. But that all changed when she saw the red and gold Iron Man suit. As it landed, Pepper stormed over to it. "Tony," she exclaimed, "you better have a good explanation for all this." The faceplate opened, and she became much more confused when she saw Thor. "Thor, what the hell is going on? Why are you in there and where's Tony?" "Lady Pepper," Thor said in a calming tone. "Friend Tony is on his way over here with the others. I assure you, just stay calm and stand off to the side." Pepper nodded her head and walked over as Thor slammed the faceplate. "Okay, what shall I do?" Meanwhile, Tony was driving the guys fast in his bright red convertible. When they arrived, they saw Natasha trying to beat the shit out of Thor. And Thor trying to blast her. "Oh my god," Clint muttered. "Nat is looking good." Natasha's Hulk seemed to be about 6'9" with the same bright green skin. Her red curls remained the same, but as for the remnants of her clothing, at least for her behalf, it covered her personal sections. "Can I just take a picture of this?" Tony asked. "I'd like to keep this." "Why don't you take a picture of Pepper's angry face as she storms over here?" Steve suggested as he left the car with Bruce and Clint. "For all we know, it might be the last picture you'll ever take." Tony smiled as Pepper walked over. "Okay Pepper, just sit in the car, and I promise to explain everything from the very beginning when we get back." "You better," Pepper hissed. "Come on, you still love me." "Deal with all that," she pointed at Natasha, "and we'll talk later." Tony hopped out of the car and ran over to the group. "How the hell do we do this?" Clint asked. "Bruce, you know anything?" "For all I know, the Hulk can only be stopped when overpowered, or tranquilized by something extremely potent." Bruce mentioned. "Yet, is there anything stronger than the Hulk?" "Possibly not," Tony said, "but I have an idea. All of you, distract her." Steve, Thor, Clint and Bruce were distracting Natasha while Tony was browsing through the types of arrows. Standard, no. Repelling hook, no. Explosive, no. Net, probably. Hurry up, Stark, Steve exclaimed as Natasha picked him up and threw him towards a mailbox. Hold on, I got something. Tony rose the bow and shot the arrow, which exploded into a net, capturing her. See, it worked. That's what he thought. Before their eyes, Natasha ripped through the net and growled in all their faces. Try another arrow, Clint exclaimed as he slammed her over with Mjolnir. I have a bunch of them. Okay, Tony said. Ice, no. Tasers, no. Tranquilizers, Barton, why the hell did you not mention this before? As you can tell, I'm a little busy. Tony rolled his eyes. He pointed about 3 arrows at Natasha but couldn't get a straight aim. Guys, I can't get a straight aim. Give her everything you got. Steve exclaimed as he was shooting both guns. Clint shot some lightning and Thor managed to function the arc reactor repulsor. As Natasha roared, Steve looked at Tony. Now. Tony shot the arrows. As they hit Natasha, she fell to the ground and shrunk back to her normal size. What shall happen now? Thor asked. Head back to the tower, Clint said as he picked up Natasha. We have lots of explaining to do. Stark Towers. Pepper was back in her business clothing and was sitting on the couch along with the Avengers minus Natasha, who was currently in her bedroom. Would you explain it to me now? Pepper asked. Of course I will, Pep. Tony said. It all started when. Stop right there, Mr. Stark. A voice said. You might want to tell us too. The elevator doors opened and out came Director Nick Fury and Agent Maria Hill of S.H.I.E.L.D. walked out. You might want to tell us too. Stop right there, Mr. Stark. A voice said. You might want to tell us too. The elevator doors opened and out came Director Nick Fury and Agent Maria Hill of S.H.I.E.L.D. walked out. You might want to tell us too. Director Fury, Agent Hill, Steve asked. What are you both doing here? We're both here for answers. Nick said. Mainly for the reason of what happened out there. How much of that did you see? Just to the point of Clint summoning lightning, Tony shooting arrows, Thor operating the suit, Bruce in spandex, Steve not in his stars and stripes and Natasha as the Hulk. Maria exclaimed. You see, it all started on March 4th when we were eating Chinese food. Tony started. Is that necessary, Tony? Pepper asked, wondering. Yes. Anyways, Thor decided to continue. Friend Bruce wanted those cookies with those pieces of paper one listens to. So, friend Steve noticed that there was only one cookie. After he opened it, the piece of paper said, your abilities are already mastered, try someone else's for a while. Then this all happened. How did you find out? Nick asked. Did you just get a phone call? It actually just started this morning. Bruce said. When Thor couldn't lift his hammer. After Clint lifted it, we tried each other's abilities and it was true. And Agent Romanoff? Maria wondered. Is this the first time it happened? Yes, Tony answered. What are her whereabouts? Right behind you. The group turned around and saw Natasha walk out. That was the worst thing that has ever happened. She noticed Nick Fury and Maria Hill in front of her. Hello, Director, Agent. I assume you're here because of all this. They both nodded their heads. Okay then. Natasha said as she sat next to Clint. But how did it happen? Steve asked. I know Natasha could be high-tempered at times, but she can't just explode like that. Especially since you were doing yoga. Well, it was going great until someone threw a grenade through the window. Pepper explained. It exploded and Natasha hulked out. Why would someone just throw a grenade? Clint wondered. There is a problem much more important than that right now. Nick stopped them. We need to find out how your powers got switched and how to reverse it. All that's possible is like the movies, some ancient voodoo shit. Natasha remarked. Yet, we all know that doesn't exist. Really? Pepper asked the redhead. That coming from the group that fought monsters, magic and has a demigod right underneath their noses. She has a point. Maria told them. How do you plan on investigating? I'll start it, Tony said as he got up. Jarvis, show me all scanning for anything unnatural between the days of March 4th to the current time. Yes, sir, Jarvis said as he lowered some holograms showing the night sky. Here is a showing of last night at 11:45 p.m. There seems to be an irregular cosmic shower passing by Stark Towers. Scan it, Bruce commanded. As it scanned, something popped up. It seems to carry off some kind of radiation. Powerful energy. That is the sorcery that swapped our powers. Thor said. Is there a possibility that we can reverse it? There is, Bruce said, but I don't know how. Tony. I have nothing, Tony said. He began thinking for a bit. Wait, Jarvis, is there a chance that the same cosmic storm will appear again? There will be one coming soon. Jarvis told the group. Next week, but I can't get an exact date. March 17th, Steve muttered. What did you say? Nick asked. March 17th. According to the fortune, our lucky day was March 17th. Steve repeated. That's the day the cosmic shower will be. But another one of my questions is, how did this cosmic shower start? Maria wondered. It's just not natural for some random cosmic storm to appear and just happen to do that. There is obviously someone behind this. And March 17th could just be there to make it look like a normal fortune. You'll never know. In other cases, I want you all to investigate this immediately. Nick said. This has to be solved as soon as possible. Wait, Natasha stopped them. Does the council know about this? No, and I don't plan on telling them. Nick and Maria entered the elevator. Good luck, Maria said. You're going to need it. When the doors closed, the Avengers all looked at each other, not knowing on where to start. What are you going to do? Pepper asked them. Clint stood up. Who's in the mood for Chinese? What are you talking about, friend Clint? Thor asked. I'm saying that to start with our investigation, we should start at the place where it all began. Clint suggested. Something's bound to be up. Jarvis, where did the takeout come from? It was ordered from the Chinese Dragon. Jarvis said. Direct location on the corner of First Avenue. Thanks. Stark, you drive. Got it, Tony said. Pepper, stay here. Cancel all of my meetings, press and all that shit. Yes, Mr. Stark. Pepper nodded her head. Do me one favor and come back alive after all this. Of course I will. Minutes later, the group arrived and walked out of Tony's car. What should we do? Bruce asked. I don't know, I'm kind of hungry. Tony said. Maybe we could grab a bite. Not a chance, Stark. Natasha commanded. Did you not notice what happened last time we ate food from here? Well, what should we do? We can't just stand here. Why don't we just walk in, eat, just to look natural? Steve suggested. Then when we receive the cookie, ignore it. Then investigate around here and there. Everyone nodded their heads and proceeded in the restaurant. Everyone nodded their heads and proceeded in the restaurant. They all stood in front of the booth as the waitress strutted up to them. Hello, she chirped in a bubbly tone. Welcome to the Chinese Dragon. Table for how many? 6, Bruce said. Okay then, follow me. The waitress led them to a booth in the back. What they found weird was that the place was crowded and the problem has happened to nobody else. Here is your table, she handed them their menus. I'm Kimmy and I'll be your waitress for today. I'll just give you a moment to decide on what you want. Kimmy left them alone to decide. All right then, Steve said. What's the plan? Before that, Natasha stopped them. Do you all have your earpieces? Everyone nodded their heads. Good. What's the plan? You guys act natural, Clint said as he stood up. I'm going to pry around the vents for some useful information. They all nodded their heads as Clint walked off. It was something he was naturally good at, growing up in a circus and all. He reached the men's bathroom and looked under the stalls for any people. None. Clint went in one stall, stood on the toilet and pushed the ceiling tile above him. When there was an empty space he climbed through. Okay guys, I'm in. Head for the kitchen, Bruce instructed, and make it snappy. Hey, I can only move so fast in this vent. Before Bruce could yell back, Kimmy walked back to them. Are you ready to order your drinks? Yes, ma'am, Thor said politely. Okay, what can I get you? Water for us, Natasha smiled. Except for Tony. What would you like? Beer, Tony said. Doesn't matter what kind, surprise me. All right, Kimmy said as she wrote it all down. And for your other friend? Water, Natasha clarified. Kimmy nodded her head and walked away. Barton, you got anything? I just arrived at the kitchen, Clint said, peering down at the many chefs cooking. But there's one problem. What is it? Steve asked. Every one of them is speaking Chinese. I don't even know Chinese. I do, Natasha told them. Just barely stick out your earpiece low enough that I can hear. Got it, Clint said. He took out his earpiece and barely lowered it from the vent. Natasha heard their constant bickering but translated what was most important. The Avengers are here, let's make their dish special. What the hell? Bruce asked. Shish, Natasha told the group. They're still talking. After listening a bit more, it seems that the cookie worked on them since the redhead seems more stressed than usual. Well, that's just plain rude. Our plan is running as we hoped, but besides that, someone is spying on us this very minute. Clint, get the hell out of there, Tony exclaimed. Clint reattached his earpiece and heard noises as if 2 more people were coming through the vent. Shit, he muttered as he started crawling quicker. When he saw the 2 guards behind him, he noticed that they both had different types of guns on them. Great. When he reached a dead end, he slammed the end and an idea popped into his head. Both guards pointed their guns at him and Clint just laughed. Isn't it great that this vent is carrying all 3 of us? Well, it was until Clint started slamming his feet on it. The shaft started shaking and it sent them both down in the center of the restaurant. Clint got up along with the guards. He had his hand on his back as if he was about to pull out a bow. But he forgot that he didn't have a bow, let alone that he couldn't use it. One of the guards sent a punch to his jaw and sent him down. Natasha stood on the table and looked at the panicking patrons. Everybody clear out, she exclaimed. Thor, help me. I shall, Thor said as he ran to help the others' patrons. Tony picked up a fork and threw it into the arm of the guard. He forgot that Hawkeye's gift also came with perfect aim. As the guard was screaming in pain, Bruce picked up a plate and threw it as if it was Captain America's shield. It smashed against the other one's head. Steve headed over and kicked them both off their feet. When that chaos was all cleared, all the employees of the Chinese Dragon were staring at the group. Many of them were holding many different types of guns. But from the back of the crowd, the manager of the restaurant walked up to them. I see you all have changed, she hissed. How did that happen? Oh right, you ate our food and opened the cookie. What was your fortune? Your abilities are mastered. Try someone else's for a while, Steve told the lady. Right, and that did happen. But before I do anything, the employees raised their guns, but she gestured for them to lower them. Please, what if this happened for a reason? What if you were meant to be like this? Yeah, I highly doubt that, Natasha told her. I was trained for many years to be the Black Widow, not the Hulk. I earned that title. But what if it was destined? Written in the stars. Sure, Bruce said, but you also want to know what was written in the stars. What? She asked as Bruce looked at Thor. That you will most certainly not get away with this, Thor said. We will defeat your evil acts and get our powers back. The employees raised their guns again and the lady didn't stop them this time. Any final words before you blast to bits? A few actually. Tony smiled at her. For starters, if you shoot, Natasha would simply Hulk out and kill you all in an instant second. I'm not sure if Thor is still immortal or if Clint took that. Shut up, the lady demanded. Anything else that will actually matter? Yes, Tony said as he and the others slipped on a gas mask. Check please. Natasha threw a few smoke bombs and in an instant, everyone was passed out except for the Avengers who successfully escaped the Chinese Dragon. From the chaos that went on yesterday, the Avengers decided to sleep for the remaining of the day until the very next morning. But that immediately changed when Pepper walked into Tony's room. Mr. Stark, Pepper called. Tony, you need to wake up. Why? She heard Tony moan underneath his bed sheets. What time is it? Noon. And Director Fury wants to speak to all of the Avengers via Skype. What would that pirate want so early? Tony moaned as he dragged himself out of bed. He made himself look decent and headed over to his laptop. Tony logged on and saw that the remaining Avengers were already online. Morning Stark, Nick said. Something in his voice made the others infer that this was going to be bad. As for you all, I swear to you all it wasn't me or any of the other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Director, Clint said. In our defense, we can't really agree with that until you mention what's going on. Nick sighed. Someone leaked to the council about the problem. And what have they said about it? Thor asked. What are they planning? They want you all to come in. Nick stated. A little chat about what happened. But I'll let you know one thing, don't tell them whose powers you have. It could be potential danger for all of you waiting to happen. And Stark, for future cause and effects, you might want to send Pepper on vacation for a bit. Tony nodded his head as he left the laptop. Will it be that bad? Bruce wondered. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Drive Banner, this is the council. Nick reminded him. These are the people who almost sent a nuke to Manhattan. Anything could happen. True. So, when are we supposed to go? They said, ASAP. The Avengers all got dressed and headed over to S.H.I.E.L.D. to what might be life-threatening. It could even put them in more potential danger than they were in before. Be careful what you say. Nick warned them before leading them into the room. They all walked in and saw the big computer screens with the different council members on it. Hello, Steve greeted. How are you all doing today? We're fine, Captain Rogers, the council man said. Now, on towards business. What do you all plan to do towards this issue? We are planning to get to the bottom of this. Thor explained thoroughly. It is right that these menaces get fined for their actions towards us. All we do is protect Midgard from foes such as them. The council knows you all do that. The lady told them. Now, would you tell us whose powers you have? I don't think that really matters. Natasha slammed. Excuse me, Agent Romanoff. It doesn't matter whose powers we have because all that matters is that our powers are switched and we need to find out who did it and how to reverse it. But what if there is a battle coming up and you need to defeat it? Another member asked. I still think you're bombarding on Natasha's question. Clint mentioned. For example, if I'm a master marksman, which I am or was, I'm sure whoever has my ability will still be able to configure my bow and properly shoot an arrow as good as I can. And what do you have to say about the Chinese dragon incident? Another member wondered. Well, Bruce stated, I would have to say that they're our main lead and possibly the people who plotted it against us. From whatever happened there, we were on our way to investigating deeper into that. Well, we were until we got dragged into this. All right, the lady said, but what if? I guess we're now going into the what if situations. Tony interrupted. And what's wrong with that? It's just that there is a 25% chance that a what if situation will actually happen. And if you carry that out, the chances are less than 50%, making the probability of your statement unlikely to carry out. What are you implying? If I may, Steve barged in. I think what Tony is implying is that we could be standing here all day answering your endless questions containing a what if situations that will never happen. See, even the 90-year-old Solider caught on. Tony playfully slapped Steve's back. The council members looked at each other. I think we're done here. One of them said, Good day, Avengers. The Avengers left the room and smiled at each other. Well, we carried that out well. Clint pointed out. Can we leave now? Yes. Tony said. I'm tired of standing here. Moments later. When they all returned home, Jarvis informed Tony that Pepper left prior to 30 minutes ago. So Tony, it must be that bad since you sent your girl on vacation. Clint stated. How long is her vacation? I told her to go until I called her back. Tony told him. She said it was fine. And, Pepper also wishes us good luck for this whole thing. She knows us so well. We're going to need it. Natasha commented as she turned on the TV. Where are we going to start? What we need could be anywhere. On Earth. Like Bruce said, our current lead is the Chinese dragon. Steve said as he shut off the TV, receiving a slap on the arm from Natasha. But knowing the restaurant, it's possibly under construction for the moment or we're banned from it. I think it's both, Bruce said, but we do have our advantage. He looked over at Tony. You thinking what I'm thinking? A grin appeared on Tony's face. Yes, I am Banner. Yes, I am. The living room of Stark Towers reeked of caffeine and beer. But since Tony owned the place, they were used to it. Mainly because the Avengers were up all night looking for answers to what the Chinese dragon has to do with this. And why. At the moment, Clint and Natasha were passed out on the couch. Steve was on the recliner. Thor was sleeping on the floor. Nobody knows how he ended up there. Bruce was on one of the tables and Tony was at the mini bar beside all the beers he drank. Don't even get him started on the sheets of paper all around the room. Steve woke up and stretched. He rubbed his eyes and looked out the window at the rays of sunshine peeking through the clouds. Jarvis, he called for. Yes, Mr. Rogers. The AI responded. What time is it? 5:22 in the morning. Thank you, Steve replied. He looked around the room with confusion. He wondered how everyone ended up like this. Especially Thor. Jarvis, how did all this happen? A hologram appeared before Steve's eyes. I will show you the security footage between the hours of 9 p.m. to now. 9 p.m. But we do have our advantage. He looked over at Tony. You thinking what I'm thinking? A grin appeared on Tony's face. Yes, I am Banner. Yes, I am. I am confused. Thor told them. What is this advantage friend Bruce is talking about? I'll explain to him. Natasha told the group. Tony is going to use Jarvis. She received a confused look from Thor. The voice you can't see. He's going to use him to hack into the Chinese dragon's information and see what we can try to use against them. I now comprehend. You know what to do, Jarvis. Tony said. Yes, sir, Jarvis replied. Accessing the Chinese dragon personal flies now. After a bit of scrolling, the page dinged. Finished. Now you see the company's files in front of you. Which one would you like me to print? All of them. Indeed. Minutes later, Steve picked up all the sheets from the printer and handed them out throughout the Avengers. They spent the night looking through the sheets. 10 p.m. Most of them have gone through at least 2 cups of coffee. Decaf. Unless you're Tony, who went through 3 bottles of whatever beer he laid his eyes on. Oh my gosh, Natasha exclaimed. These little skanks have our shield files. No wonder they knew our abilities. After we beat the shit out of them. Tony pointed out. We are officially telling Fury to get a new firewall. But won't you need to hack into it? Bruce asked the drunk billionaire. I meant, we get him a new firewall, hard for regular people to hack in. But still simple for me to do. 11 p.m. I got something, Clint exclaimed. It turns out they did this as a part of Project Switched Powers. What does that entail? Steve wondered. They experimented on us for some major project they planned. So we were their stupid guinea pigs. Bruce exclaimed. I know I've been a guinea pig before, but they could have asked. But what did the cosmic storm have to with this? Their formula was possibly a type of vapor that they sent to us. Could have gotten in through the windows or the ventilation system. Tony guessed. It was smart to do that instead of breaking and entering. So now you're agreeing with the maniacs? Natasha asked rhetorically. Just saying. But what did the piece of paper have to do with this? Thor wondered. I think it was called a fortune. It could have just been a voice trigger. Bruce guessed. When Steve read the fortune, it could have activated it. Besides that, we need a location of their top base. Natasha told the group. Keep on looking. 12 p.m. Did you guys find anything yet? Tony said as he opened his 6th bottle of beer. Bruce sighed. Do you really think that the Chinese dragon would? I have found something. Thor bellowed. What? Steve asked as he walked beside him. The location of their operation. Where is it? Clint asked excited. A place in Waverly, Iowa. But in the deserted area. Waverly, Iowa. Tony asked, panicking. Yes. Is that a problem, friend Tony? It's just that, when I told Pepper that she had to go on vacation, she told me that she would be staying at her sister, Valerie's. And she lives in Waverly, Iowa. Don't worry, Stark. Natasha placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. When we go there, we will make sure to stop them before they hurt the only woman who loves you. You're so compassionate, Steve told Natasha. If they hurt Pepper, I'm going to blast them. Tony exclaimed. Barton, get the jet, we're going. You shall rest, friend Tony. Thor suggested. We have been searching for hours just for this one location. And our powers are still screwed. Clint mentioned. We need to work it out and get used to it. Fine, Tony said. But we're going after them after we're done. Okay then, Bruce said. Just get some shut-eye and then we'll go train. Everyone planned to sleep for a couple of minutes. But that turned into hours. Present day. That's enough, Jarvis, Steve said. Jarvis stopped the video. He lied back on the recliner and decided that it was too early to wake the others. So, like the others, he decided to fall back asleep. Wake us up later. Indeed, sir. The AI responded. All the Avengers minus Natasha were lined up in a row holding the weapons that you could say were possessed to them. How do we do this? Bruce wondered. You're all used to training to your own abilities. Whereas, I don't train. Let's start with the shooting, Clint suggested. He picked up the hammer, Tony rose an arrow, Steve lifted his guns, Thor heated his repulsors as Bruce prepared his shield. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Everyone fired. Obviously it hit the target. What's the point of training if we already have this mastered as well? Tony asked. On second thought, what was the point of those restaurant people doing this to us? They're just setting themselves up for failure. We're training for this, Steve said. For example, Clint summoned back the hammer. Okay, Clint said confused. He stuck out his hand and the group observed the hammer making its way towards Clint. When he caught it, he fell back towards the ground at the hammer's arrival. So that's what you meant. While Clint was lifting weights in the corner, Steve and Bruce decided to be sparring partners. As they were throwing punches at each other, Tony was teaching Thor how to really operate the suit. Really, you just tell Jarvis what to do, Tony told Thor. What it can do are shoot repulsive rays, missiles, lasers, fly. As Tony went on, Thor had a confused look on his face. Okay. For now, just ask to shoot a repulsive ray. All right, Thor bellowed as he raised his hands. Shoot a repulsive ray. Indeed, sir, Jarvis said as he lit up his hands. Rays shot out and almost shot Steve and Bruce. How was that, friend Stark? Thor asked Tony. Tony was avoiding laughing at the startled looks on Bruce and Steve's faces. That was great, Thor, if you were trying to kill Steve and Bruce. Oh, Bruce, you can't be afraid to punch me, Steve told him. But I can't punch a friend, Bruce defended. On the battlefield, the other guy does all the punching and kicking. Since you don't have the other guy at the moment, you won't mind if I did this. Steve knocked a right hook in Bruce's jaw. Bruce fell over and glared at Steve. He checked if his face was drawing blood. Dude, what the hell? What? Just hit me back, Steve told Bruce as he got up. He stared at Steve as he punched him as hard as he could into his arm. Steve rubbed his arm as he smiled at Bruce. See, now you ready for a real, or fake fight? Bring it on, old man, Bruce said as they began fighting. People, Clint exclaimed, regaining the attention of the remaining Avengers. I think I am ready for the hammer. This will be good, Tony smirked as he shot another arrow into the target. Go ahead, Barton. Clint rolled his eyes, completely ignoring the genius. He placed his hand out and his heart started racing as he saw it come towards him. When he caught it, there was a bang. Was that you, friend Clint? Thor asked. Did Mjolnir do such action? No, Thor, Clint replied to the demigod. It was from over there. He pointed to the other end of the gym where the three of them saw Steve just finish slamming Bruce on the ground. What the hell, dude? Bruce exclaimed as he got up. How the hell do you memorize Natasha's moves so fast? Natasha's moves are similar to mine, Steve explained. It wasn't that hard. Speaking of Natasha, I wonder what she's doing, Tony asked the group. A few floors up, Natasha was comfortably sitting on the couch reading magazines while watching reruns of CSI, NY. She was about to see who the killer was until Jarvis stopped it. What the hell, Jarvis? The redhead exclaimed at the AI. I'm truly sorry, Miss Romanoff, Jarvis apologized. But incoming call from Director Fury. Whatever, Natasha said as she picked up the call. Yes, Director. Agent Romanoff, Director Fury said. Something in his voice made Natasha have a weird feeling of what he had to say. I know that you're all not back to the way you were, but there is a worldwide emergency at the moment. What is it? An abandoned warehouse is unleashing a set of nuclear bombs to hit the major cities all over the world. Only the Avengers can stop it. Can you do so? Of course, Natasha replied, even though she had doubts in her choice. But where is this warehouse? Waverly, Iowa. Oh, really? Natasha asked, slightly smirking. We'll get it done, Director. Okay, bye. Natasha hung up the phone and entered the elevator. She muttered under her breath, they just want us to fall into their little trap. She walked into the training room and almost got zapped from a bolt of lightning. Sorry, Tasha, Clint exclaimed, running over. What are you doing here? Well, long story short, Director Fury called. She explained. What did the pirate want? Tony wondered. He wants us to clear up an Abandoned. Warehouse dealing with nuclear bombs. Anything else we should know? Steve asked. I'll explain it in the jet ride there. I'll also be meeting you there. But for now, suit up. As Natasha left, the 5 men looked at each other. Well, this is going to be fun. Bruce stated unexcited. Someone just had to act stupid now. Please, we can handle this in the snap of a finger. Tony said as he left, followed by the remaining foursome. How was this mission going to go? How would they complete it, especially since their powers are still swapped? The Avengers suited up in each other's suits and met up in the jet. Clint was in the pilot's seat with Natasha sitting shotgun. So Tasha, where are we heading? Clint asked as he started the engines. Surprisingly Waverly, Iowa. Natasha smirked. I'm positive that they want to end this once and for all. And I don't blame them. How much longer? Tony asked. Everyone could tell he was nervous. For Pepper's own life. Can this jet go any faster? If I was in my Iron Man suit, I would be there by now. Shut up, Stark, Steve commanded. Besides Pepper, there are hundreds of other civilians out there with their lives at risk. This is where we end it for good. And our powers? Bruce asked. We'll find out when we get there. We're here, Clint said as he landed the jet a mile away. Scan the building, Thor. I shall, friend Clint. Thor replied as he allowed Jarvis to scan the area. Many nuclear bombs in sight. Total of 3 floors with many guards on all. Top floor is what we want. Steve, Tony asked, what are we going to do? The second we step in there, they'll let the bombs go against us. We're going in, Steve confirmed as he started walking towards the building. The group stayed behind, giving him a look. What's wrong? You heard Tony. Bruce told him. If we go in, many people will die if we go in. And a lot more will die if we just ignore it. Steve continued walking, followed by Natasha, Clint, Thor flying close, with Tony and Bruce, who joined eventually. Just bust through and avoid causing the alarms to go. What about me? Natasha asked. Don't you think they would do something if they saw, the Hulk? Stay with us, Clint demanded. If we don't make it out alive, I want to die beside you. Try not to be provoked and the beast won't come out. Cap, Tony asked, since you make it sound like we're going to die in there, just say it one more time. For the team. Okay then, Steve replied. A smile grew on his face as he said the 2 words, Avengers assemble. As they arrived, Thor blasted the doors down. Many guards were giving them evil looks. What? Natasha asked rhetorically as she casually stepped in. You all knew we were coming. So, let's finish this once and for all. As she ran through the crowd, the guards were shooting non-stop. Avoiding the Hulk to burst, Natasha ran over to the control panel and started working out how to disable the alarms. Bruce raised his shield, causing the bullets to ricochet off. Steve pulled out both of the guns and started shooting back. Tony ducked behind a metal pole, shooting arrows. One of them snuck up behind him. Tony turned around in an instant and whacked him over with his bow. Thor was blasting non-stop. Thor, Bruce yelled. How many people? There seems to be about 35. Thor replied as he blasted a group of them. Tasha, Clint exclaimed as he slammed one of them with the hammer. Hurry up with the alarms. Don't rush me, Barton. Natasha yelled back. You try doing this under pressure. She heard the sound of a gun being aimed. She slowly turned around and saw a gun pointed at her head. Step away from the control panel. One of the men said. No thanks, Natasha replied as she continued to rummage through the wires. I will shoot. Look around you. If you see the other Avengers, you would know that one aspect is missing. That is the big enormous rage monster known as the Hulk. And for your information, it is inside me as we speak. So the one who should step away is you. Natasha's smile turned into an evil glare. Or I will smash you myself. He took one step back and received an arrow through his chest. As he fell to the ground, Natasha saw a smiling Tony Stark. Thanks for the distraction, Romanoff. Tony said as he pulled out another arrow. Anything to disable the alarms easier. She smiled. Look behind you. Tony turned around and shot one of them. Which was the last one? For that floor. Area's clear, Steve told them as he refilled his guns. You all right? Fine. Clint, Tony, Thor and Bruce replied in unison. You done, Natasha? Bruce asked the redhead, with the alarm system. Natasha popped her head up. Yeah, let's go up. Wait, Clint said as he twirled the hammer. Why don't we make a different entrance? Many of the Chinese workers were working as if nothing happened the floor beneath. But that changed as soon as Clint and Thor busted through the windows. Majority of them pointed their guns. Clint held his hammer high as Thor had the repulsive raise up. For those of you here who actually have a brain, Clint threatened as thunder clouds started rumbling outside the building. Just put down your gun and run. If you make it in time. Thor and Clint smiled as a few of them put down their guns and ran for their dear lives. They scrambled towards the elevator and pushed the button frantically. As the doors opened, they backed away when they saw Steve, Bruce, Natasha and Tony with their weapons pointed at them. You can run. Steve aimed his guns, but you can't hide. Tony started shooting arrows along with Steve shooting his guns as Bruce started punching people to their wits. As Natasha was walking somewhere, one of them pulled her against a wall with a gun to her forehead. Natasha was gasping for breath as the man aimed his gun. You just made a bad mistake, Natasha said. The man looked at her with confusion as her eyes turned a bright shade of green. Dude, Tony muttered to Clint who just slammed someone out of the window. Shit just got real. Natasha turned into her temporary green alter ego and slammed the man to his doom. Her bright red curls bounced wildly as she proceeded to someone else to kill. Steve was shooting non-stop until he realized he was out of ammo on both guns. He put them back in the holsters. He looked at his hands and forgot about the widow bites. Might as well try this out, he said. Steve jumped on one of them, sending them to the ground. As he wrestled against Steve, he placed the glove on his neck, sending too many volts into him. So that's what it does. Thor blasted a couple of them with his repulsive rays. Mr. Odinson, Jarvis called. Power at 25%. Okay, Thor muttered. Truth be told, he had no clue what that meant. What does that mean? It means that there is 13 minutes and 36 seconds of usage of the suit. Thank you. He blasted a ray from his arc reactor against Bruce's shield to hit a cluster of them. Bruce kicked one of them over as he threw his shield at another. His shield bounced off the wall before landing back in his hands. Bruce, Tony called. Last one behind you. In an instant reaction, Bruce turned around and punched him in the jaw. You could have done that to me in training, Steve said as he patted his shoulder. What I'm wondering is why this all went down so fast. Bruce stated. I assumed that they would have at least made a challenge. As they all pondered for a second, they heard Natasha's Hulk yell. They all turned around and saw a needle in her arm, making her shrink back to Natasha and fall to the ground. Tasha, Clint exclaimed as he ran over. He dropped the hammer on the ground and ran over to her. Slight pulse, just tranquilized. He pulled out the needle and threw it on the ground. Could be invisible, Tony suggested. Thor, asked Jarvis to scan the area. I shall, Thor bellowed. Jarvis, scan the area. After Jarvis did so, Thor was shocked. Friend Steve, behind you. Before Steve could process that, someone knocked him over. Tony, Bruce and Thor had their weapons all around them. Before Thor could say where it was, his suit got short-circuited and he fell over. Someone got Tony's bow and whacked him with it along with Bruce's shield. The invisible person unprogrammed her suit and it revealed to be a young girl with an Asian descent. She pressed a button in her earpiece. Get me the remaining workers who are alive. One day later, March 8th, everyone minus Natasha woke up. They saw the woman in front of them with an evil grin plastered on her face. Morning. Who the hell are you? Bruce exclaimed as he pulled against his restraints. They all looked around them and saw a bunch of computers with the command to do anything they wanted. Neither of them had their weapons on them. The name's Lucy. If you think we're that close, then Lucy Chen. Why did you do this to us? Thor demanded. Everyone has their reasons. What I thought was that I could do what I wanted. So I switched your powers for my benefit. For your loss. What you already know is that I made the Chinese dragon to get close to you in my nuclear shipment. But you have no clear statement about this whole thing. Tony told her. Why don't you tell us why you switched our powers? I mean, you're smart enough to find a way to kill us. Even the Hulk. Why didn't you just murder us on the spot? Lucy remained silent as if she had no response. I know, Steve smiled. Really? Lucy asked. Do you, Captain? You could have killed us. But you didn't. The reason you switched our powers is because you thought that we would die during this fight. You wanted us to die our own ways. What are you saying? You can't kill. Lucy was giving Steve a death stare. That's why you wanted us to fight here. You thought that we would just die here so you won't have to kill us. That is why you have those nuclear bombs to kill those people. Just so you won't have to do it yourself. Lucy smiled. I guess that's why you're the captain. Smart, strategic, and certainly knows how to save lives. But how can you save these people when you're tied up here? I might not kill you by ending your life, but how can you go back home knowing that you let millions of people die right under your nose? That's right, I can kill you mentally. You would not dare, Thor muttered. She smiled at them. Start the launch. Missile number 23432. Target, Waverly, Iowa. No, Tony exclaimed. Pepper. No, Tony exclaimed. Pepper. Lucy laughed at Tony's cry. You can't do anything about it. He might not, Clint said as he opened his fist. Mjolnir was suddenly in his hand. He summoned lightning to burst himself out. But I might. Clint instantly flew out the window. Tony felt a small sudden wave of relief pass by him. Let's see what you can do, Lucy muttered as she saw Clint fly after it. She looked at the remaining Avengers. Good luck trying to get out. Clint sat on top of the missile and threw the hammer on the ground. He figured that he can always get that later. Clint opened the panel and saw a bunch of wires. Great, I have about 2 minutes before this thing goes off. How hard can it be? After a moment of thought, nothing. Come on, Clint. For all those people out there in the city. The remaining Avengers. Wait, Avengers. Natasha. All those freaking crime shows she made me sit through. He started pulling out wires in the order he remembered from those crime shows. What he hoped was that he remembered, and in time. We need to get out, Bruce said as he tried to pull through the restraints. Yeah, no shit, Bruce. Tony replied as he did the same. Our only possibility is Natasha, Steve said as he glanced over at Natasha. She was still out unconscious. But she's not available. What about your suit, friend Tony? Thor asked. Can it come to me like my hammer used to? I don't know, Tony responded. For once he wasn't sure. It depends on which suit you took. Which mark did you take? Your suits are labeled Mark. Thor asked Tony. The sudden archer dropped his head in dismay. Then I do not know. You know, maybe. We could always hope Clint will come back or Natasha will wake up from whatever she's in. Steve suggested. Clint was still rearranging the order of wires until he had 2 in his hands and was completely stumped. He had to cut one of the wires. But was it the red one, or blue? Classic crime show trivia. One wire would make the bomb explode on the spot, possibly killing him and the city, and the other will make the bomb drop to the ground. The pressure was getting to Clint. The city of Waverly was a few miles away and this bomb was getting closer. Godamn it, stupid fortune cookie, Clint thought. Did you give Tony my hawk senses too? He knew he had to pick one soon. The fate of the civilians were in his hands. As he entered the city, the bomb didn't blow. Something was up. It was being aimed at a target. But where? Now that the bomb was made to kill someone, his heart was racing even faster. I got it, Tony said. I know what we can do. What? Steve asked. I'm waking up Natasha. Good luck, Bruce said. You know Natasha's a sound sleeper. Just trust me, Tony told Bruce. This is bound to work. He took a deep breath. Natasha. Clint's dead. In an instant, they all saw Natasha's eyes wide open. She took a bunch of deep breaths and looked at the restraints. What the hell? Told you. Tony smirked at the group. Natasha, get us out of here. Break through and do some smashing. I never thought I would hear that, Steve stated. I just need to get mad, Natasha said, and I have no clue on how. How about I tell you this? Bruce offered. The person under all of this is a random Chinese chick who means to eliminate us. Well, she messed with the wrong redhead, Natasha muttered as she forced her eyes to turn bright green. Now that's what I'm talking about. Tony laughed as Natasha smashed her way through her restraints and freed the others. The Iron Man suit automatically attached to Thor and functioned. So you picked that one. Everyone minus Clint was armed. Now, Thor stated boldly, let us find our main antagonist. On second thought, Lucy, who was suddenly in the room, stared at them. She pulled out 2 types of swords from her jacket sleeve. To be more specific, the were swords called Say. I found you. Now, it's you all versus me. What about Clint? Bruce asked her. You know he's part of the team. Oh please, knowing the fact that he went after the nuclear bomb, he's most likely dead. At the notice, Natasha came charging at her at an instant. But with ease, Lucy was avoiding every one of her green fists with a series of backflips. Tony was shooting arrows constantly, trying to kill her if she had to. Thor was blasting at his own will. Steve was shooting bullets non-stop. Lastly, Bruce was attempting to throw a punch at her. They all hoped that Clint would magically fly in at one point. The bomb Clint was sitting on was heading to one certain house at the edge of the city. The simple brick placement rang a bell in his mind from various pictures he's seen around the tower at times. Once it struck him, he had to make a choice fast. This was the house Pepper was staying at. From the window, he saw Pepper staring at him with confusion. Clint made the decision. It might have been wrong, or right. As he cut the blue wire, he stared into Pepper's deep blue-green eyes, currently filled with an endless amount of tears, as he mouthed the words, I'm so sorry. Tony has always loved you. As he along with the missile crashed through the house. It wouldn't have made a difference if she ran deeper within the house, the bomb would have killed her either way. It's not like the battle with the remaining Avengers was any better. By now, they were all battered, bruised, covered in bloody wounds, and with all their spandex uniforms basically ripped. As Thor continued blasting, he got a disturbing alert from Jarvis. I am terribly sorry, sir. Jarvis told him. But the suit seems to be out of power. As the system shut down, Lucy ducked an arrow from Tony. She ran over and used one of her Say to slice his bow in half. Whoa, Tony said. That's unfair. Take this, Lucy said as she kicked him over. Tony slammed against a wall and slid down in pain. She headed over to Bruce, who blocked every one of her hits with the shield. But Lucy got in a handstand and spun around, kicking him over. She bent back his arm, causing it to fracture. Bruce swore he heard a crack in there. Steve ran out of bullets at one point, so started attempting to kick Lucy over. As he jumped in the air to kick her over, Lucy stabbed one of her Say at his waist, causing him to slam to the ground. He winced once he noticed the amount of blood he was losing at once. As Natasha stormed over to her, she slammed Lucy against a wall with an angry fist and a matching green fist to knock the life out of her. Lucy smirked at the girl and used her remaining Sai to stab her right in the middle of her chest, right in her heart. Natasha backed away, taking breaths as she pulled out the Sai and forced herself to shrink back to her regular self. With her vision blurring, she fell to the ground. Lucy picked up both of her Sai and placed them back in her jacket. She headed over to her master computers and set the building to explode with the Avengers still inside. Rest in peace, Earth's mightiest heroes, Lucy muttered. Pepper was on the ground covered in dust and dirt. Her eyes fluttered open and was shocked she was actually alive. She turned to her left and saw the nuclear bomb that was supposed to explode right beside her. A feeling of relief passed by her as she noticed by the control panels that Clint had actually cut the right wire. Clint. Pepper looked on the other side of the bomb and saw Clint out unconscious. If only her sister Valerie was home, she was a medical doctor who could easily deal with this. She placed 2 fingers to feel for a pulse, but felt nothing. Do you think Natasha and Tony would mind if she applied mouth-to-mouth? Since it was her only option, she had to do so. Pepper was pounding hard on his chest, trying to get his heart to start up again. She was silently muttering various prayers over and over. Once she did enough, she was about to have to apply mouth-to-mouth, but she noticed that thunder clouds were slowly forming. A smile approached her face. Back at the battle, Lucy was about to leave the building with it rigged to explode in about 5 minutes, the amount of time it would take for her to leave the building. As she started walking out, some things just had to be said. You'll never get away with this, Bruce muttered. Seems as if I already had, Lucy said. Before they knew it, a sudden bolt of lightning burst through the room. All the Avengers looked and saw Clint magically alive. Told you, Bruce muttered to Lucy. Well, seems as if you've taken care of the team. Clint said. But now, it's my turn to take care of you. He spun the hammer and slammed her over with a massive bolt of lightning. She flew across the room and slammed against the wall. You made a bad mistake, she muttered as she closed her eyes. Trust me. Good work, Bruce said. We were all thinking of doing the same thing. Barton, Steve called. This building's going to blow. We have about 4 minutes and 30 seconds to get out. You all right? Clint asked Steve as he helped him up. Yeah, Steve replied. Not sure about Nat, Thor. They both looked over and saw the suit disassemble on its own. Thor stepped out and looked at both of them. I am fine. Okay, Steve said. I'll get Tony. Thor gets Bruce and Clint carry Natasha out. What about the remaining bombs? Tony wondered as Steve lifted him up. If this place blows, so do those bombs. But according to the distance from here to the city, the blast will be fine. Then let's go, Steve said as he led them outside. Once they reached outside, they started running as fast as their legs could carry them at this point. Sweat was pouring down their faces as the hot sun hit their faces. They were running for their dear lives at this point. All of them were just happy they made it out alive. The jet was about a few feet away and the building was about to blow in 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8. Once they reached the jet, everyone got inside and sat down in their seats. 7.6.5. Clint started the jet's engine alongside Natasha, who was now awake. 4.3. Barton, Tony exclaimed. Can you do this faster? If we're not out by the time this building blows, we all die. Shut up, Stark, Clint yelled. We're doing this as fast as possible. 2. The jet begins to ascend and Clint maneuvers it to fly out of there as fast as possible. 1. 0. As the jet just made the border, all of them sighed with relief. Now it was official that they made it out alive. I can't believe it, Natasha muttered. We actually lived. We won. SHIELD headquarters. What are you both going to do now? Nick asked the group. What is that supposed to mean? Tony exclaimed at him. If you haven't noticed, by our faces, bruises, uniform and all the blood on us, we almost died back there. I noticed. Then what the hell are you all mad about? Clint yelled. Him along with the others were truly pissed at the moment. You killed Lucy. Nick, how can you be mad at that? Steve asked. In our defense, look at what she did to us. She planned to murder us. And Pepper, Clint added. What? Tony exclaimed louder than before. Anyways, Steve said, bringing it back to topic. She also planned to destroy the world with an illegal shipment of nuclear bombs. Actually, we're all basically confused on why you're mad at us. Didn't you also want her dead? After, Nick stated, which shocked all of them. After what? Thor questioned. After you sentenced her to death, Natasha asked. 'Cause it's a little too late for that. Lucy was the one who switched your powers, right? Nick asked the group. Didn't you already know that? Bruce asked. I mean, we told you that in the beginning. Didn't we? Doesn't matter. What I'm saying is that if Lucy has the intelligence to get your powers switched in the first place. You see where I'm getting at? No, Thor responded. Nick rolled his eye. If Lucy can get your powers switched in the first place, that means that she is the only one who can switch them back. The Avengers all sat in the meeting room with disappointed looks on their faces. It was nobody's fault, they just forgot to color in the big picture. All they focused on was killing her, but that badly backfired. Now, they're just stuck as each other. I'm sorry, Steve blurted out. I'm the captain and I let you all down. Steve, Natasha said calmly, it's not your fault. We let ourselves down. Yeah, Thor agreed. We just let our vengeance overpower us and did not look at the big picture. So what should we do? Bruce asked. I mean, we were the Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes. But not really anymore. There is one thing, Clint suggested, but I don't want to say it. It's kind of depressing. Steve nodded his head. I know what you're thinking, Clint. Everyone else nodded their heads in agreement. I think it's best if we... No, Tony yelled, jumping out of his seat. Don't you dare say it, Steve. Well then, what the hell are we supposed to do? Anything else but that would be great. Stark, Natasha muttered. It would be best for us. Especially since we're like this. Tony sat down looking at the ground for the remainder of the session. He didn't like where this was going. Wait, Thor said, pausing the conversation. Just to be sure, what is this idea? The Avengers all looked at Steve for him to reveal it to the group. I think it would be best if we all split up for the time being. Steve whispered to the group. He didn't like this idea, but it was the best for the group. What do you mean by split up? Tony asked. As in, no more fighting bad guys, or leaving the tower. I think we mean leaving the tower, Bruce suggested. Then I guess we need to pack, Clint said as he stood up along with the others, minus Tony. As they dragged themselves to their floors, Tony looked up and just decided to stare into thin air and think. Pepper walked up to him and sat down beside him. Tony, she muttered, I am so sorry for all this happening. Don't be, Tony replied. At least I didn't lose you. I mean, I lost my suits, my friends, but at least I still have the one thing I can't live without. Tony, you don't have to act all strong at the moment. This is a huge loss. If you want, you can cry. Pepper, I am or was Iron Man. And I don't cry. Tony stood boldly. Pepper just stared at him until he broke out. She grabbed him in a huge hug. Oh Tony, it'll be all right. As time passes by, you'll assemble again in no time. Meanwhile, Natasha neatly folded her clothing as she tried to remember all her great times with this group of freaks. One quote flashed through her head. You're a spy, not a solider. Now you want to wade into a war. Well, I guess I'm neither of them. She muttered to herself. I'm actually a Hulk now, and possibly forever. Clint roughly threw his clothes in his duffel bag. He didn't want this to end. Captain, it would be my genuine pleasure. Yeah, he muttered. It was my pleasure to shoot arrows at aliens. Steve lightly packed his clothes. This was the only thing he had now, and he had to say goodbye to it. No matter what happens, you must stay who you are. Yeah, he muttered to himself. I can't promise anything anymore. Bruce slowly packed whatever he needed. Him along with the others decided to take their dear time. You see, I don't get a suit of armor. I'm exposed, like a nerve. It's a nightmare. That was true, he muttered to himself. But now, I got to admit that I kind of miss that. Thor honestly didn't care how he packed. He had nowhere to go since he couldn't return home. You cannot even defend your friends. How can you protect a kingdom? I guess father was right. He muttered to himself. If I cannot protect my friends, how can I ever rule a kingdom? Nor, how can I return to it? When they were done, they all dragged their luggage towards the elevator and met up again on the floor they started out on. All with the same sad look on their face. I guess this is goodbye, Steve stated. For now, Tony butted in. Oh yeah, what did you do with the weapons and suits? Left them in the now empty bedrooms, Bruce said for all of them. Come on team, Clint said dropping his bags. We're a group of freaks and always will be till the day we stop breathing. He spread his arms out wide. Group hug. Natasha put herself in first. Followed by Thor, Steve, Tony and Bruce. Okay guys, Natasha said to the group. I think that's enough love being spread around. Never, Tony exclaimed. No, I mean I can't really breathe anymore. Oh, they all muttered as they split up. Bruce pushed the elevator button and they all stepped in once it arrived. It took them to the basement where they all piled into their cars and drove off into the day. This is the day where the Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes, came to an end. Before, as the elevator door shut, Tony looked at it as a memory leaving him forever. Pepper, he muttered as he noticed the strawberry blonde behind him. Have you ever had something taken away from you that you think it can't crawl back to you? No, she shook her head as she wrapped her arms around him. But I have one question. Shoot, Tony said as he made his way over to his couch. It's not like I have anything better to do. I thought that you could use the suit without the arc reactor in your chest. So, can't you still use it? I could, but I choose not to. Why? It doesn't feel the same. How so? I'm used to flying around the city during battles knowing that the Avengers are somewhere else in the battlefield. But even if I try to even leave the building in my suit, I can just assume it won't feel the same. And it won't be fair to the group. It means that I can still use my suit but they can't operate their weapons. I guess if you put it like that. And besides, Iron Man isn't a solo hero anymore. He has or had a team. And he proclaims that he only works with them. Pepper smiled. I know exactly what you mean, Tony. And trust me, a miracle will bring you all back together. I really hope so, Tony said, but at the moment, I'm pretty sad. Well, what do you want me to do about it? Me, he suggested. You know that you don't need to ask. She pulled him into a long tender. Steve Rogers Pav. My name is Steve Rogers. I was born a scrawny kid who failed many times to get into the army. But one opportunity sprung for me. It was called Project Rebirth, a chance for the army to make their very first breed of super soldiers. After the trial, I became the only super solider the world has ever known. I wanted to do what I had planned to do in the first place, shut down all Hydra warehouses. But I was ordered as just a science experiment. I declined that order and became the world's first superhero known as Captain America. I spent many weeks shutting down known Hydra bases around the world, but one of them changed my life. Right there on the outside of a moving train was where I lost my best friend, Bucky Barnes. His death gave me my motivation to cut Red Skull out for good. I broke into his Hydra facility and chased his jet filled with bombs designated for America. Unfortunately, the plane was too fast for me. Luckily, my luck changed when I got a ride from the one man who claimed I couldn't fight in the war. That was when I got my first before I jumped on the plane. On the plane, I battled his guards until I had to take out Red Skull himself. After a short fight, he somewhat killed himself by touching the cosmic cube and getting sucked in thin air. That left me in the plane's controls. I could have let the plane just go straight, but it was aimed for USA with many bombs on board. So, I made the ultimate sacrifice. I sat in the pilot's seat and placed the controls in my hands. What happened next? I forced the controls down and decided to crash the plane. I knew I was going to die, but I didn't care. I would be happy that America lived for a better tomorrow. And that was the end of me. I woke up. Which shocked me since I thought I died back there. I sat up in the bed and a lady walked in claiming that this was a recovery room in New York City. But it didn't feel right, so I busted out realizing that the set was a hoax. I ran on to the city and found out one thing: the world has changed a lot. And that was because I was actually asleep for 70 years. Who was I now? My name is still Steve Rogers, but at the moment, I'm not the super solider I was 70 years ago. Natasha Romanoff's Pav. My name is Natasha Romanoff. I was a young girl raised in a secret institution called the Red Room. It was where they trained young girls under the guidance of the Winter Solider so that they will one day be a master spy, codename, the Black Widow. That lucky little girl was me. But after they killed all the other girls in front of me, I ended that institution. I burned down the building so no other girl will be stripped of their childhood and forced to follow my footsteps. This is the beginning of how I went solo. I was still a spy for the Soviets, but I just decided to go by my own name, Black Widow. Many agencies around the world wanted me dead. Apparently, they thought I was the bad guy, which I wasn't. I was the complete opposite. But one day, in Budapest, was when my life took a whole different turn of events, in a good way. There was a man representing S.H.I.E.L.D., his name was Clint Barton, or better known as Hawkeye. He was sent to kill me. After a brutal battle there, he took the time to listen to my side of the story unlike the others who I had to kill. I explained it to him from the very beginning. He believed me. Instead of killing me, he threw his bow on the ground and decided to take me back with him to America to set the line straight. It worked. S.H.I.E.L.D. accepted me into their environment and I was now one of their top agents, codename, Black Widow, with my signature weapon, Widow's Bites, and my partner, Hawkeye, by my side. Who was I now? My name is still Natasha Romanoff, but at the moment, I'm not the spy I was before. Thor Odinson's Pav. My name is Thor Odinson. I was born of Odin, king of Asgard, to one day take his place and be the one worthy of the mighty hammer, Mjolnir. I was not raised alone. I had a brother named Loki who found out years later that he was actually adopted and his real dad was a frost giant. During my coronation to rule Asgard, it got interrupted by some frost giants breaking into the vault attempting to steal the casket of ancient winters. Against my father's orders, I took my brother Loki, Lady Sif, and Warriors 3 to end this feud. Once we won, I had returned home with my father extremely furious at me. So furious that he stripped me of my powers and exiled me to Earth with my hammer, Mjolnir, claiming that only the one worthy can lift it. On Earth, I met a girl named Jane Foster, She showed me the ways of how real mortals live on Earth. In return, I showed her the knowledge of the 9 realms, which to them is what they call science. You could say I have developed what they call a romance with her. What I found out from a visit by Loki was that Odin has fallen into the Odin sleep and has died. But that was a lie. In the end, I have found out that at this time, Loki has taken over the throne of Asgard. I could have done something, but I had no ability to do so. Loki wanted revenge on me. That was his main intention. So, he sent the Destroyer to come to Earth and kill me. In my luck, Lady Sif and Warriors 3 came to aid me. It was no use, the Destroyer was going to destroy me along with the small town. At this point, I made the ultimate sacrifice. I let it kill me. It slammed across the town. Near to my own mortal death, my sacrifice was able to prove myself worthy of Mjolnir. And from that point, I ended the Destroyer. But I was not finished, for I had a battle back home with Loki. That was when I had to say goodbye to Jane. But I gave her my word, I will return. Back in Asgard, Loki has betrayed Laufey and killed him. His true intentions were to destroy Jotunheim using the Bifrost Bridge. I had to stop him. With all my strength, I destroyed the Bifrost Bridge. Sadly, I cannot return to Earth, nor see Jane. As Loki and I were holding on to our dear lives, my father, now awake, reached his hand out to us. But Loki decided to fall into the abyss. Thus, the point where we all thought he was dead. Who was I now? My name is still Thor Odinson, but I am no longer the god of thunder I was born to be. Clint Barton's Pav. My name is Clint Barton. I was born into a family with a younger brother, Barney, an abusive father and a mother who just didn't care. One day, my dad was drinking and driving, but that ended when the car crashed, ending both of my parents' lives. That was when Barney and I were enlisted into the orphanage. Not for long. We escaped and our only hope was the circus. We agreed to do anything for food and shelter. That was when I learned to do gymnastics and my personal favorite, archery. But then I moved on. I got discovered by S.H.I.E.L.D. and they recruited me to become one of their top agents. That I did. And from then on, I was known as Agent Clint Barton, codename Hawkeye. After a few missions, it prepped me for possibly my biggest missions yet, and that all took place in Budapest, Hungary. I was sent to kill a spy named Natasha Romanoff, or better known as Black Widow. I was told she has done bad crimes. But when I met her, I saw something else. I saw a girl who was lost in the world trying to make a name for herself that backfired. Unlike the others who attempted to kill her, I took the time to listen to her side of the story. And in the end, I believed her and decided to take her back home with me. From that point on, S.H.I.E.L.D. believed me and recruited Natasha to join them. That was here her and I became partners. Who was I now? My name is still Clint Barton, but I am no longer the master marksman I was before. Bruce Banner's Pav. My name is Bruce Banner. I was once a scientist who thrived for a big break. That break came to me, but it made my life go on to an uneven turn of events. I was asked to replicate the super solider serum that made Captain America decades back. Once I finished what I thought was right, I was the test subject. Unfortunately, instead of hitting low levels of Vita rays, I got exposed to extremely high levels of gamma radiation. What did that do? It turned me into an enormous green rage monster known as the Hulk. That was when my life began heading downhill. I was on the run. The army wanted to use the Hulk as a weapon. But during the time when they couldn't find me, I was chatting with a man who could cure me of my gamma poisoning. When we eventually met, it turns out that he duplicated my blood samples to administer to people as a cure for sicknesses. But I set the record straight. The army wanted to use it as a weapon and more than one Hulk would be bad. Minus my cousin, in a bad time, I got shot by a tranquilizer and was taken in. On the helicopter, it turns out that Emil Blonsky, who has been given something earlier, has also been given my blood, which mixed and transformed into an abomination. It was destroying Harlem as fast as it could. I had to do something, and I knew what. After convincing the general to let me down there, I fought the abomination. But since I knew deep down that something bad was going to happen, I fled. About a month later, in a cabin deep in the woods, I meditated. That was the day where I learned to control the Hulk's rage. Who was I now? My name is still Bruce Banner, but I'm no longer the green rage monster I once was. Tony Stark's Pav. My name is Tony Stark. I was once a billionaire who built weapons for the army. But after testing a new missile in Afghanistan, I got ambushed by a group of terrorists called the 10 Rings. While there, a cluster of shrapnel was attempting to make its way into my chest. One of my only hopes at the moment was to make a miniature arc reactor and stick it in my chest. The reason they wanted me was because they wanted me to build them a replica Jericho missile. I had different plans. With the help of Yinsen, I built a suit of armor filled with weapons and escaped. Once I returned home, I told the world that Tony Stark, was done in the weaponry business and I decided to work on something else. When I returned home, I worked on my suit to make a lot of improvements to it. When it was completed, I finished it right on time. It turns out the Obadiah, the man who basically raised me my whole life, was the one who was supplying the terrorists with weapons, thanks to my lovely assistant Pepper. I had to put an end to it, and this was how. When I went to the arc reactor, it turns out that Obadiah rebuilt a version of my Mark I suit and planned to destroy me. So using my Mark III suit, I successfully defeated Obadiah. But there was more to face. The next morning, there was a press conference where they were questioning the new hero Iron Man. So, like any other masked hero, I did what was the best decision. I told the world, I am Iron Man. Who was I now? My name is still Tony Stark, but I am no longer who I said I was about a year ago. You remember that day? If you don't, think deep into this story. And don't start complaining that I'm wrong until you reach the end of this chapter. Since the Avengers, or that group of 6 people, had nothing to do, they spent their week watching TV. Whether it was crime shows or random shows or movies they found while channel surfing, they sat on their couches watching. Until their programs stopped with a picture of a man. "Attention civilians," he greeted. They all had a sense that something was up. If you did not know already, the Avengers, your mighty heroes, have ended. Sure, take the time now to hug your loved ones and lock away your children for their protection. But that gives me the opportunity to play my ultimate plan. What is that, you ask? Well, I'm about to tell you. I plan full world domination. And now, since the Avengers are out of my way, my plan is invulnerable. Nobody can stop me. No normal human being can even come 10 feet near me. If you attempt to, I will blast you to bits before you can cry for mercy. For those of you who think you can attempt to stop me, you can try at exactly midnight if you want. I'll be here waiting. The TV screen returned to their previous program. They all gave it a strange look before shrugging it off. But S.H.I.E.L.D. took that a different approach. S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. What the hell are we going to do about this? Nick exclaimed at his top agents at the moment, which consisted of Agent Hill and Agent Carter. The question is, what can we do? Peggy said. This man means to blast anyone who walks within 10 feet of his path. There is nothing in the S.H.I.E.L.D. protocols possible. Maria told them. Guns won't touch him. You see, this is exactly what our response team was for, Nick said. But with them in some sort of unavailable position, we have to resort to new levels. Sir, I don't think Phase 2 would be an appropriate solution for this, Maria said. Peggy nodded her head in agreement. I wasn't talking about Phase 2. Nick said while giving his best agents a look. A look that made them kind of scared of what will happen next. Look, I know you two are my best agents and... Wait. Peggy stopped him right there. Just quit the flattery and tell us your plan. Nick took a deep breath. S3 are going in there. Maria and Peggy's jaws both dropped. None of them saw that coming. Are you crazy? Maria exclaimed at him. Nick, he said, no normal human being can even come within 10 feet without being blasted. We're just 3 S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Wrong. Nick corrected her. I'm the director of Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division, and you two are one of my best agents. We all had our years of training and had our failures. We can do this. Peggy and Maria looked at each other before lightly nodding their heads. Good. Be back here at midnight. Brooklyn, New York. 11:35 p.m. Steve was still up at night until he decided to call it a night. It has been another 24 hours since the Avengers were called off. As he proceeded to bed, he heard a knock on his door. Confused, Steve opened the door and saw his lovely girlfriend, Peggy, looking different. Not because it was pouring rain outside. Peggy? Steve asked, shocked to see her. What are you doing here at practically midnight? Look, Steve. Peggy started off. We need to talk, and it's very important. Oh no. You're not pregnant, are you? What? No. Then what is it? Did you hear about that terrorist on TV? She asked, referring to the terrorist from earlier making his word. Yeah, what about him? With the Avengers unavailable, Director Fury has decided that him, Agent Hill and I are going after him. What? Steve exclaimed shocked. You can't, he'll blast you. Steve, I'm a SHIELD agent. I made a promise to protect this nation. She gave him a before walking out. Bye. No, he said as he grabbed her hand. I'm not letting you. You can try to stop me, Peggy, but I'm not letting you. Steve, did anyone try to stop you from crashing that plane in the ice? Steve looked to the ceiling. Yes, and did you crash that plane to save a nation? I see your point. Steve replied, still having a firm grip on her hand. Do me a favor and be careful. She placed a hand on his cheek. Whatever puts you to sleep at night. Peggy left and Steve shut the door. He now knew that sleep wasn't an option anymore. Steve had to do something. He looked at the computer that SHIELD taught him to use and opened it. Steve decided to Skype the others. 11:52 p.m. After everyone picked up, a few of them didn't look as if they minded. Steve. Natasha moaned. You better be happy I was already awake. I wasn't. Clint muttered. I was sleeping. I have a good reason, Steve said. Did everyone see the terrorist on TV? They all nodded their heads. Well, Peggy dropped by about 20 minutes ago and... Don't tell me, Steve. Tony muttered. She dumped you, didn't she? What? No, actually something important about him. Is it that important that you had to call us at about midnight? Bruce asked. Steve nodded his head. Then go ahead. Peggy dropped by and said that her along with Nick and Maria are going after him. What? Thor asked, confused. Is he mad? He cannot do such a thing. Well, what can we do about it? Tony asked. Remember what we all decided? Stark. Steve said. You know how you felt when Pepper was in Waverly and she was about to die. Tony nodded his head. Well, that's how I feel. Before Tony could respond, a flash of unusual lightning filled the night sky. Did you just see that? Bruce asked the group. Yeah. Clint responded. Multicolored lightning filled the sky. What does it mean? Natasha asked the group. Before anyone could answer the redhead's question, their computers went off along with the electricity in their homes. As they looked around with confusion and a bit of fright, Thor held out his hands hoping to find the light switch, but instead, a miracle happened. Mjolnir appeared in his hand along with a flash of natural lightning. By Odin's beard, Thor muttered. Luckily, in the power outage, the landlines managed to still work. Thor called all of them. Hello? They all said once they picked up. Go to Stark Towers at once, Thor told before hanging up. Everyone else, still confused, hung up the phones and decided to head there pronto. Well, Tony muttered. I'm already here. All of them rushed over to Stark Towers with a feeling of confusion from the demigod's immediate phone call. When they arrived, Natasha, Clint, Bruce and Steve were all there soaked thanks to the rain. What did Thor want? Natasha asked, squeezing the water out of her red curls. It's past midnight. I don't know, Tony said as he greeted them. He's not even here yet. Wow. Bruce muttered as he fiddled with his fingers. You'd think that him, out of all people, would be here first. Well, besides you, Tony. Especially that he would bother to call us at this time, Clint added as he put his arm around Natasha. I'm tired. Before anyone could add to that conversation, additional bolts of lightning made its way into the sky. Steve moaned. What is it with all the lightning? Suddenly, Thor flew in through the window wearing his full Asgardian armor. Most of them were shocked at the meaning of this. What happened, Thor? Tony asked. Why the hell did you call us? My friends, we need to battle so we can save our allies, Thor told them. There is a man out there whom we all need to avenge. What are you talking about? Natasha asked Thor. We all know about that terrorist, but what can we do? If you don't remember, we're not exactly ourselves. That is where you are wrong, friend Natasha. Thor lifted his hammer in his hand. All of their jaws dropped. We're back. Natasha muttered, almost tearing up. I don't have the green rage monster in me anymore. Thor nodded his head. Natasha looked back at the group and grabbed Clint in a huge bear hug. Hey. Tony called, making his way to the front. We can all hug it out later. Now, we have a terrorist to go kill. Steve. Bruce called. What? Steve replied to Bruce. Since we're all back, that implies that the Avengers are back together. You get what I'm saying? Steve smirked at the scientist. Avengers assemble. All the Avengers put on their suits and felt their hearts melt inside of them. It felt as if they were reconnected with an old friend. They met at the Stark jet and started their way. Where are we headed? Clint asked as he started the jet. Kentucky. Tony replied. I tracked down the message of the terrorist as you were all getting ready. The jet's system has locked down the coordinates. As the jet was flying, everyone minus Steve, who was pacing around the jet. Steve. Bruce said, calming. Look, we're about to battle, so sit down before you waste your energy. I'm sorry. Steve muttered. Look, Steve, Tony said. I get what you're going through at the moment. Your loved one is at risk of being dead. But don't worry, I've met your girl, she's a freaking badass. Steve smiled at him. Thanks, Stark. Seems like you have a heart under that armor after all. That's what the arc reactor is for. Guys, Natasha muttered as she looked out the window. I have a visual of what our battlefield looks like. How bad? Bruce asked. Many dead carcasses surrounding the place. Natasha remarked. Seems like many people have attempted to make their way in. What about S.H.I.E.L.D.? Steve asked, making his way in between Clint and Natasha's seats. I can't tell one dead body from another up here, Steve. Clint said. He saw a sudden look of sadness in the captain's eyes of what he just said. Stark, you got anything? Jarvis is scanning the building as we speak. Tony informed the group. Thor, cover us. I shall. Thor replied as he went outside the jet and swung his hammer around, covering them with clouds. Luckily, the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents managed to make it through. As Steve did a sigh of relief, Clint noticed something strange on the radar. Guys, we have an incoming. Hold on. Everyone held on as Clint swerved the jet out of the way. He's shooting at us. Captain, do you have a plan? How far are we from the place? Steve asked. About 7 miles. Weird. I expected him to shoot when we were at least 10 feet away. Everyone nodded their heads, agreeing. Bruce. Steve called. Bruce's head popped up at the sound of his name. You think you can make it? Let's try to find out. Bruce smiled as he walked to the door. Okay. I'm going to swerve the plane. Clint told him. Jump out when I say so. Clint. Natasha called. You better be swerving that plane anyway. Incoming. As Clint swerved the plane again, Bruce jumped out in the nick of time, transforming into the other guy in midair. He crashed through the roof of the place. Now what? Tony asked Steve. We go, Steve said. Clint, just leave the jet in midair. Thor, Tony, S3 are going to need a ride. Well, I wasn't going to let you three just jump out, was I? Tony asked rhetorically. As Thor, Steve, Natasha, Clint and Tony arrived, they couldn't believe their eyes at what they saw. The whole room itself was covered in much more bodies and splattered in blood. Where is the Hulk? Thor asked. I'm not sure, Clint replied. Stark. On it. Tony replied. Follow me. They all ran down a hallway following Tony. He blasted down a door where they saw a brutal battle happening with S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Hulk versus the terrorist. The remaining Avengers. The terrorist muttered. I see you all have arrived. Let's make this fun. Avengers assemble. Steve exclaimed as they all ran over. Clint was shooting his arrows vigorously as Thor winded up his hammer. Steve threw his shield and it missed, landing across the room. Having no protection at the immediate moment, the terrorist pointed a machine gun at him and rapidly shot. Steve ducked to the ground and hid behind some tables. In a sudden reaction, Peggy ran over to him. Steve. Are you all right? Peggy asked. Steve looked at her and saw that she was covered in bruises and cuts. I am knowing that you're still alive. But what about you? He asked quickly, examining her cuts them on the spot. Those look awful. Don't be ridiculous. They're just a few cuts, no big deal. Come with me. Steve said. Hill, Fury. We're going. Romanoff, cover us. Barton, Stark, Thor, we'll be back in a few short minutes. Don't think you're going anywhere without your shield, Clint said as he tossed it over. Steve smiled as he ran out the door. The Hulk grabbed a hold of the terrorist and slammed him against the wall. Don't make a move, Tony muttered as he pointed his repulsive rays. I don't make promises, the terrorist muttered as he slid out of the Hulk's fist. He made his way over to Clint. The archer swung his bow, which he ducked from. While down there, Clint got body checked against a wall. Tony started blasting him as he ran across the room. He ran past Thor. As he was there, Thor did a grand slam with his hammer, causing the terrorist to roll along the floor. The terrorist looked up and saw the stars and stripes that spelled Captain America above him. "I'm back," Steve said as he kicked him over. He pinned the bad guy to the ground and was about to do more to the man before the terrorist knocked him off and was all of a sudden on top of him. He was about to headbutt him until he felt a nice tap on his shoulder. He turned around and received a kick in the face from Natasha. He got up and Natasha jumped on his back. After a quick wrestling match, he did a backflip, knocking her off. Clint shot a taser arrow at him, knocking him back to the ground. The terrorist was sprawled on the ground and looked up, seeing the 6 faces of the Avengers ready to kill him on the spot. "This isn't over yet," he muttered. "Yeah," Clint muttered, "it just started." "This isn't over yet," he muttered. "Yeah," Clint muttered, "it just started." Clint threw an arrow which he dodged under. Thor summoned lightning and sent it in his direction. That didn't work either. As the Hulk appeared out of thin air, he grabbed the terrorist and slammed him on the ground a couple of times like he did to Loki a while back. A few of them snickered of the memory. But when he was done, he backed away and allowed the remaining members to take care of him. Tony, Natasha and Steve stood above him with the same serious look on their faces, displaying the same message. Along with the others, they were covered in cuts, scrapes, bruises, and some had there. "What can you do now?" Tony asked him as he pointed all of his repulsive rays at him. "It's not like you can do anything," Steve added as he lifted his shield. "We're the Avengers." Natasha finished for the group as she pointed her guns. "And you're just a man wanting more power." She looked at the group as they slowly nodded their heads. Natasha shot both of her guns at him. As he died on the spot, they all rose their heads and looked at each other with blank looks. "We just won," Clint muttered as he hung his bow over his back. New York. The Avengers plus the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents arrived back at Stark Towers. All exhausted, with that being one of the most challenging days of their lives. Or one of the most challenging weeks for the Avengers. Tony walked out and threw the scraps of his suit on the ground. Hearing the sound of clattering metal sent Pepper to the room. When their eyes locked, Pepper ran over and grabbed him in a huge hug. Tears were pouring out of her eyes as her hands went through his hair. "I'm so glad you're alive," Pepper whispered in his ear. Tony's heart melted at the sound of her voice. "Well, I do have something to come home to," Tony responded. Steve grabbed Peggy in a big hug too. It was what he wanted to do since the battlefield. But found that this was a better moment. Nobody was trying to kill them both. "I thought that I would have lost you," Steve said. "But you didn't," Peggy replied. "You along with the Avengers saved my day along with millions of lives." "And your point is?" Steve asked, smirking. He knew what the response will be, he just wanted to hear it. "You will always be my star-spangled hero." Clint pranced over to Natasha and placed a playful arm around her. Natasha grabbed the hand around her shoulders and clasped their fingers. "That was fun," Clint told Natasha. She turned to him and looked at his blue eyes. "How was that fun?" Natasha asked him. "It was hell." "Hey, I'm just starting a conversation." "That's a stupid way to start a conversation." "But look, we're having a conversation." Natasha let go of Clint and playfully slapped his arm. "Prosto zadnis I obnat mina," Natasha muttered in Russian as she hugged him. Clint giggled for a bit as he hugged the red-headed assassin. "Just shut up and hug me." A few days later, the Avengers were all sitting in the living room one afternoon. "Now what are we going to do?" Bruce asked the group. "Talk about random shit?" "No," Tony said. "Something else." "Then what?" Natasha wondered. "Our feelings? Because I don't do that." "It's not like you even have feelings," Tony muttered. Natasha stood up with both her fists ready to knock the daylights out of him. "Anyways. Maybe there was a moral to all this happening." "Since when?" Steve asked rhetorically. Nobody expected a moral to this story. And what would the moral be for this whole happening? "I thought of something." "Just guess." "Always listen to what you mortals call fortune cookies," Thor guessed. Tony shook his head. "Always let S.H.I.E.L.D. deal with our shitty problems," Clint guessed. Tony shook his head. "Never listen to Tony when he offers to buy dinner," Natasha guessed. Tony shook his head, also feeling a bit of rejection. To accept our abilities and never want anybody else's, Steve guessed. Everyone nodded their heads, think that was the right one, except Tony. Come on, Bruce. Tony whined. Get it right. Bruce thought. This was tricky. We should never disassemble? Nope. Tony said. Then what is your little moral? Natasha asked. The remaining Avengers all turned their heads to the billionaire, who was cracking a smile. The moral of the story is. Anyways. Maybe there was a moral to all this happening. Since when? Steve asked rhetorically. Nobody expected a moral to this story. And what would the moral be for this whole happening? I thought of something. Just guess. Always listen to what you mortals call fortune cookies, Thor guessed. Tony shook his head. Always let S.H.I.E.L.D. deal with our shitty problems, Clint guessed. Tony shook his head. Never listen to Tony when he offers to buy dinner, Natasha guessed. Tony shook his head, also feeling a bit of rejection. To accept our abilities and never want anybody else's, Steve guessed. Everyone nodded their heads, think that was the right one, except Tony. Come on, Bruce. Tony whined. Get it right. Bruce thought. This was tricky. We should never disassemble? Nope. Tony said. Then what is your little moral? Natasha asked. The remaining Avengers all turned their heads to the billionaire, who was cracking a smile. The moral of the story is. That as a group, we never order Chinese food again, Tony said boldly. Natasha, Bruce, Steve, Thor and Clint gave the billionaire blank looks before stifling a laugh. That was your big moral? Steve asked. I thought you would do some philosophy or biblical stuff to create one. Hey, I am an atheist. I would never use biblical stuff for my sayings. As they all continued their small chit-chatting session, Pepper walked into the room wearing a white ensemble with her hair in a ponytail. As she saw the group having fun, her heart stopped and reminded her of many memories of the group. But she resurfaced reality when she remembered why she walked in. Tony. She called. The genius looked over at her with loving eyes. Director Fury just called and wanted to inform you that the council would like a meeting with the whole group based on the past events. You heard her, team. Tony said. S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. Hello, council. Tony greeted with a bright smile. The council replied with their usual stone faces. I'm happy to see you too, he lowered to a whisper. Nice one, Stark. Clint muttered. Tony glared at him and nudged him back. Avengers. One of the councilmen started. I see that you all defeated that terrorist, along with regaining your powers back. They all nodded their heads. Care to explain how? The Avengers all looked at each other with confused looks. How will they explain it to make it believable to the council? Let alone the fact that they believed it themselves. It was just a lucky happening thanks to a piece of paper with a date. Well, Natasha told them. She decided to speak up since she was a loyal member of S.H.I.E.L.D. for many years, and since Clint decided to play the ladies first rule. You could make it out as a miracle towards us. Agent Romanoff, I would never expect such a response from you, the councilwoman said. Natasha just stared at her, implying to the team to back her up. Clint made his way to the front. I think what Agent Romanoff is saying is that it's kind of like karma. We've saved the world a handful of times. It could be the universe giving us a reward, or good karma. You all believe in stuff like miracles and all that? Why shouldn't we? Bruce asked them. You have a lightning summoning demigod from a different world standing right here. What we believe in is not of a concern right now. He has a point. Thor bellowed. The many wonders of Asgard contain many miracles you cannot begin with. Maybe the beliefs of miracles aren't our number one issue at the moment, the councilman said, but if you could, recap the events of the past week. For starters, our powers got switched. Steve started. Then we decided to fight the person who caused it and ended up killing her in the process. Then when we came back, Director Fury said that we did something stupid and killed our only hopes of turning back to normal. Tony informed them. Then Captain Spangles. Steve gave him a death glare. I mean Captain Rogers, along with our agreement, decided to somewhat put the Avengers initiative on hold. While we were on our, you could call it a vacation, all of us heard of the terrorist sending his message, Natasha added. That was when S.H.I.E.L.D. decided to take action, Thor said. Then Steve called us all up saying that we all need to get in there so he can protect his little lady. Clint smirked. Everyone stared at him. and along with the others and the world. As we started making our plans, the power went out and some sort of lightning filled the sky. Natasha told them. The council gave them weird looks. Then we all met up at Stark Towers with the great news that our powers are back. After that, we all left to battle the terrorist, Bruce stated, and won. Last question. The councilwoman said, "What have you all learned from this mishap?" The team looked at Steve to give the council the final statement. The remaining team members expected a heartwarming message beyond this point. No matter what happens, whatever crosses our path, no matter how threatening it is, if we can't defeat it, we'll avenge it. Steve started. That's because we're the Avengers. Earth's mightiest heroes. There was an idea, one that was made many years ago. It was called Project New Generation. It was where we would get the kids of the Avengers Initiative and use the potential they have to continue in their footsteps. They were all just 6 kids at one point. The Solider, the Spy, the Archer, the Knight, the Monster and the God. But the death of their parents made them stronger individuals and that's what happened. But now we need them. The world needs them. Ooh. Is this about Project New Generation? 'Cause I thought I didn't qualify. This isn't the time for personality profiles. Besides that, all that's written is pretty accurate. Yeah. Apparently I am, and I quote, capricious, vain and don't play well with others. And I thought that idea was scrapped. Director Fury has her ideas. Ooh. Is this not any easier? Is this not your natural state? It is the unspoken truth about you mortals which you crave subjection. You were made to be ruled, and in the end, you would always kneel. Not to people like you. There are no people like me. There are always people like you. Ooh, I'd sit this one out, bro. I don't see how I can. These people come from legend, they're basically gods. There's only one god, sis, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that. Ooh. I care how you speak. Sigyn might be beyond reason, but she is of Asgard, and my cousin. She killed 80 people in 2 days. Her father left her as a child. Ooh. You think I'm not? Why did Fury call us in now? Not before, when they started analyzing the cube. What is she not telling us? You can't do an equation without all the numbers. You think Fury's hiding something? Captain, this is S.H.I.E.L.D. The place with possibly the biggest secrets of the whole world. And Bethany is the master spy. Her secrets have their own secrets. Ooh, Dr. Daniel. You have to fight it. This is exactly what Sigyn wants. We're going to be alright, okay? I swear, on my life, I will get you out of this and you will never have to. Your life? Ooh, what are you asking me to do? I'm asking, what are you prepared to do? Sigyn's a prisoner. Then why do I feel as if she's the only person on this ship that wants to be here? Graduation mishap. Now for the speech of our valedictorian, Emily Stark. Hi. I would like to say that the choosing wasn't rigged. I'm actually pretty smart. Ooh. Hold up, Tony. Obadiah? I thought you were dead? And I'm not. Ooh, Peggy, I can't sleep. You think I can? Both of our children are gone. It just bugs me that the one with our kids is the one that was supposedly dead over 70 years ago. Ooh. You really think it was smart to break in? Well, you think Steve will open the door at this hour? Ooh. Nat. What? I saw something out there. There's nothing out there. But I swear something moved out there. What was it? It was some sort of cat. Ooh. What are you going to do with the disappearance of your daughter? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. You messed with our kids. We'll end your life before you can beg for mercy. The end. Now we will see you in the next video.